that.
Type E for eh. Welcome everybody to Unsheathed Sword Reviews. I'm John.
I'm Vic.
And today we are going to talk about the Hanwei Tinker Viking Sword.
Yes,
yes,
sir.
we are. Absolutely, that's what we're going to talk about.
So this is the Hanwei Tinker 9th Century Viking Sword. And before we get started, big shout out to Andy from Delatric Swords, part of our prisoner exchange that we are wrapping up now. This is his personal sword, I do believe. And it is one that I believe he got this secondhand. And there are some signs of use on it, obviously. But yeah, we have some stuff to say.
We do.
So
we do.
Real quick, the Hanwei Tinker line are swords that are designed by sword maker Michael Tinker Pearce, and then Hanwei produces them for a much more affordable price. Think about some of the A-trim,
like
Kingston Arm designs, or a Vision collaboration, but just more budget orientated. Because this sword is about $300 US dollars, give or take. Mm-hmm. So should have some pretty good functionality at an affordable price. On that note, John, what do you think of aesthetics and fit and finish?
Well, aesthetics, and I'm hoping that you folks out there can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that this might be a Type E Viking sword, or at least based on a Type E Viking sword, according to Peterson's typology of Viking swords, which mostly has to do with handle construction. Mm-hmm. So my thought is with the dimpling and with the pinned together construction, that this is probably a Type E, but I'm interested if anybody can correct me on that. I would like to know that. Looking at it, it doesn't look bad at all, actually. I enjoy the way the pommel looks. I enjoy the handle. You can definitely tell it's not real leather. It's synthetic leather. But it doesn't look horrible. It doesn't look as bad as some other lower-end swords that I've seen that have synthetic leather. And the blade is actually kind of handsome. I kind of enjoy the blade. It's got a good deep fuller all the way down on both sides. It's fairly symmetrical. There's lots to like about the way it looks. So yeah, in terms of fit and finish, I also feel like it's somewhat unfair to talk about this and evaluate its fit and finish, given the fact that it is currently loose. So I don't know what happened to make that occur. I don't know. Maybe it hit a hard object.
What do you say? What's loose? So for the viewers.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, the blade is, as you pick up the handle, you can feel that the blade is moving. Probably the peen is disconnected to some extent. I don't know exactly.
Not sure exactly. If you do the thing where, like, if you smack the bottom of the pommel to get the blade to flex so you can see the vibration notes, when you do that, there's a rattle. Somewhere. Not sure where, but there is a rattle.
And you can feel a distinct shift when you manipulate the blade. It like click, 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 click. So I don't know. It's probably disconnected. Probably the epoxy on the inside broke.
Or there wasn't enough.
And the wood constricted probably over time. So that's probably what's going on.
So to build off your point of just aesthetics before we get into that kind of stuff, I do like the aesthetics of this type of Viking sword, Viking era sword, I know. Yeah. You could find lots of swords, like some pictures of swords that look like this in the book Swords of the Viking Age by, I believe it's Ian Pearce. Great book. And you can see, so I like the fact that a budget level sword is recreating the look of things that did exist in history. I genuinely like that. However, again, this particular example, it's not the best. Another thing that I noticed after the fact, and I messaged Andy about, was if you look, the guard is slightly off center from the guard. The grip, I should say, is off center from the guard pommel. Like it's like at a weird angle. I'll show pictures to try to show it. It's kind of hard to see in pictures, but like it's very noticeable in person. Doesn't really affect handling or moving it around much at all. That has its own set of issues we'll get to.
I tend to think that that's all related to the looseness.
Probably,
all together.
Maybe the tang is twisted.
Yeah, who knows?
Or something. But that is slightly off. Aside from that, though, the peen looks pretty good. The gap in the crossguard's pretty good. The fittings themselves look pretty good. Faux leather doesn't look the best, but it feels fine and is very functional. And for $300, it's fine. John is dead on in that the Peterson classification system is about the hilts, not so much the blades, because they pretty much all had Type 10 blades. Right. So moving on to the blade, I'm not exactly certain that this would qualify as a Type 10. It does look very badass. It looks very cool.
It does, yeah.
To my knowledge, most Type 10s have a more rounded point. I know there were some that were a bit more acute historically, but I don't know that there were any that were like this acute.
Because most of them are like spatula. Like they're really rounded.
Yes. Yeah. And even the ones that are more acute are nowhere near this. Again, I could be totally wrong. If you know of examples that were very acute like this, let me know. I also tend to think that the fuller isn't really wide and deep enough like a Type 10 should. Also, it after the fuller, it goes about as high as it should, but then it transitions to what looks like a diamond cross section. Should be lenticular. That said, though, maybe I'm completely off, and there are examples that look like this. Again, let me know. That said, though, it looks badass. It looks like a mean-looking blade.
It does look like a badass Viking sword.
Yes.
It does, yes.
Absolutely. But it also looks like the type of blade that somebody who doesn't know what they're supposed to look like would make.
Which is not what you would expect from a Tinker Pearce sword.
So I don't know if that's a miscommunication in the design or if it's just I don't know what that is, but it strikes me as looking ahistoric. Which again, for $300, if you don't give a shit about it, then that's perfectly fine. Sure. But just throwing that out there for context. On the fit and finish does come with a scabbard right here, and it is wood core.
Yep.
So yeah, wood core has some metal fittings on it that I don't think these are historically accurate particularly.
I don't think so either.
But it does look cool. It looks pretty good in the scabbard. Very simplistic, but I think that matches well with this blade, right?
I like the way it goes, especially because the hilt is kind of ornate. So like having some simplistic elements is great because it probably would have come off looking cheap.
Agreed.
Yeah,
so, I actually like that it went that route.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So you get a functional wood core scabbard for less than $300. So like that is a huge plus for the sword. For me, and I know for John, where this sword really kind of falls apart, is in the handling.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk about how this is slightly off from spec from what is listed, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. So the listed weight was 2 pounds, 8.5 ounces. This comes in a little heavier than that at 2 pounds, 10.5 ounces, which isn't a terrible thing, but it feels pretty blade heavy. But it's a Viking sword, so
it probably should.
It probably should feel blade heavy. But the big difference is the point of balance. So it's listed at just about 5 inches, 4 7/8 inches is what it's listed at.
Which is perfectly good for this type of sword.
Which is what it should be. This one comes out we tested it out at about almost 7 inches.
Yeah,
6.5 inches, a little bit more than 6.5 inches. So it feels very, very unwieldy. I mean, now don't get me wrong. You could deliver a very powerful downward chop with this sword because of that. But it takes the things that are bad for me about Viking swords and it takes it to the ultimate level of being unrecoverable, unwieldy.
And I think part of that, why the point of balance is so far off, is we measured the distal taper. And the distal taper listed on the site is 4.8 down to 2, which again, if you don't know, most of these Type 10 blades are pretty thin like that. They don't have a lot of thickness to them.
Right.
This was 5.4 down to 3.1. Again, doesn't sound like a lot of difference, but when you have more mass out in the blade, that is going to affect how it moves.
That completely explains that point of balance change. Right. Absolutely.
And for context, just because a point of balance is that far out doesn't necessarily mean a sword can handle poorly. I recently got the Albion Gerialt, right? That's point of balance is about 6 inches. However, that is a 35-inch blade, and the taper is much different than this. So even though that is stout and has authority and definitely feels like,
probably the most authoritative one-handed cutter in the world, like you were saying. So,
but that feels like what that sword should feel like. Again, if this were that, I'd be fine. But this takes that and just goes through the roof of like unwieldy.
Agreed.
Right?
And when you pair that with the hilt design of Viking, it's a decent hilt design. It's historically appropriate, but they're very unforgiving. And so when you have a really, really blade heavy sword with this sharp, unforgiving handle, it's almost painful at times to wield.
Well, because like you said, you really can't redirect this. Like you need to throw the blade forward and let the momentum take you, which is fine. But you're right. Any kind of maneuverability is kind of lost. And then when you pair that with just the design of a Viking era hilt, which by design is supposed to lock in your place, and
tight,
nobody really knows how to hold them. There's a lot of good theories out there, but they're just kind of naturally somewhat uncomfortable anyway. And when you pair that with a very, very unwieldy blade, this is not fun to use at all. And it's decently sharp. I think when Andy got it, it was pretty sharp, but I think the edge is worn quite a bit because for us,
we were batting bottles around like it was our job.
And again, it could be our poor edge alignment, could be the fact that the blade was so heavy we were getting thrown off in the cut when we were mid swing, all this kind of stuff. But like, I don't think I landed a single clean cut with this sword.
Agreed, absolutely.
So not fun to use as a backyard cutter, and maybe this is an outlier, maybe, because I know a lot of people online genuinely like this sword.
Well, and again, it's like a Tinker Pearce sword. You expect it's going to be pretty magnificent, except for, like the furniture and stuff. But if he designs the blade, it should be a magnificent blade.
I suspect if this sword matches the spec that was listed, we would probably be more favorable to it.
I tend to agree.
We'd probably be like, hey, it's a Viking sword.
Just bring that point of balance back by 2 inches and it changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
we'd probably be like, hey, this is a Viking sword. Not really our thing, but it's a good representation of that.
Absolutely.
I think this particular sword, its tolerances were just off, and it is not fun to use whatsoever.
Agreed. And then when you add to that the fact that it's broken and that you have movement in the handle, it's and honestly, probably a lot of the reason that it broke is because of the fact that it's got so much mass up top that it just generated too much momentum for its construction to be able to hold up to. Honestly, because it probably wouldn't have happened if it was lighter. But,
yeah. So yeah, we can go on and on, but I'm just gonna say not fun to use. And honestly, I don't collect wall hangers for a reason. I want functional swords.
Yes.
That I can go out and use. And honestly, if I owned this sword, I would never go cut with it.
Agreed. 100%. But it does look decent on the wall.
It does look good on the wall. Yeah, it does. That said, though, for me personally, at about $300 US, this is a no for me.
There's a lot more that you can get for $300-ish than this. Absolutely, 100%. In a variety of styles and from a variety of makers. There's a lot better swords you can get for $300.
And I'm going to build on that by saying real quick that even if ours is an outlier, that's worrisome. Because you're still spending money, and if the tolerances are that far off, then you don't know what you're going to get. And
both be wrong.
Right. So yeah, pass for me. I'm not a fan of this sword.
Yeah, it's a hard pass for me as well, which is a shame because I had high hopes for it, and I do like the way that the handle typology looks. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think it's Type E. Right.
I tend to agree.
I like how it looks, and I wish it was better than it is.
Strongly agree, but don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
Yeah. Anything else?
No. So thank you very much for watching. We appreciate it, and continue to like and subscribe for more exciting content coming out. Our next few videos are going to be some LK Chen swords, which we're very excited to talk about. So,
yep. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications.
Peace.